Hey, good morning, or afternoon, or good evening, depending which time of the day you're watching this video. We created this video because I've been getting this question over and over again, and I thought, what a great opportunity to put this in a succinct video so everybody can understand this concept better. Now, for the past 40 years, the bond market has been in a bull market from pretty much 1980 until 2021. So during those 40 years, bonds have effectively gone up in value. And this happens because the yield on the bonds is coming down. There's an inverse relationship. Yields go up, price goes down. Price goes up, yields go down. And that's the inverse relationship that bonds have. So in a perfect world, you have a bond that's yielding 20% and then interest rates drop to zero. That would be a great return that you can get in your bond. So much like in the 80s, where some bonds actually were at 20%. And if you look back 2 years ago, 2021, bonds actually some were at zero. Now that relationship is important, but that's not why I'm talking to you today. The reason I'm talking to you today is because some of you own actual bonds. I'm not talking about ETFs or mutual funds. I'm talking about actual bonds. So let's take some examples because I really want to illustrate this point. Let's say you have a treasury bond. Treasuries are considered one of the lowest risk debt instruments out there. We could argue whether that's true, but most people consider that, so let's stick with that for this example. Now, for the last 20 years, US Treasury rates have been low, in some cases zero, and people still bought them. However, since those treasuries were issued, interest rates have gone up. You've probably noticed this. Inflation hit over 9% last year. And even though it's come down, it's still relatively high. And you also might have noticed that if you go to the bank or other places, you can probably get a 5% treasury CD or something in that range. Now, here's the thing you need to understand. If you go to the bank and you get a CD, let's say you give them $1,000 and it's 5% for the sake of this example. You give them $1,000 and they give you back $50 at the end of the year. That would be the equal of 5%, right? And that's a CD. I think most people have experience with that, and you'll all understand how that works. Okay. So that 5% is what we call a rate of interest or a coupon rate. Now, the $1,000 you gave them is what we would call principal. That's the amount you initially loaned to the bank. And then they borrow it from you, and then they pay you back 5% interest annually. Okay. Banks are really easy because there is no secondary market for your CDs. It's just the bank, the price of the CD stays the same. However, if you buy US Treasuries or even CDs on the secondary market, the price can actually fluctuate. Now, if you own a US Treasury bond, let's say 5 years ago, you bought a Treasury bond and you gave them $1,000, and interest rate was 2.5%. So the 2.5% interest rate is also called the coupon rate, which means that for that $1,000, you're getting $25 a year from the Treasury. Now, you could argue whether that's a good deal or not, but that's not what we're talking about. Okay. So you're getting 2.5% a year. Now, this year, 2023, and in 2022, the interest rates rose. So they went from close to zero or zero, depending on what we're talking about. And they went up as high as the Fed funds rate went up to 5.25, at least at this point. Now, let's call it 5. So the interest rates went from 0 up to 5%. That's a big jump, right? Now, if you look at that bond that you bought a few years ago at 2.5%, right? You're getting 2.5%, but now if you bought a bond, you can get 5%. So that 2.5% is worth a lot less right now. Because why would you buy a 2.5% bond when you could buy a 5%, right? No one's interested in the 2.5. So in order to balance that 2.5 has to be discounted, meaning the $1,000 you spent on that bond is now worth, we'll call it $975. Okay. So the $1,000 is now worth $975. So if you were to sell that, you would get back $975, not your $1,000. If you were to sell it, if you were to hold it till it matures, you get your $1,000 back. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because what a lot of people are not understanding is there are a lot of bonds out there where the coupon rate is 0 or close to 0. Now, if you take this example, so you have this bond worth 2.5%, and you have the current rate of 5%, what you're going to find is that 2.5% is being paid in interest every year, right? So if you go out and buy a bond today, you might get paid 2.5% a year for that bond. But you can buy a 5% bond elsewhere. So why would you buy that bond? Well, I'll tell you. It's because that 2.5% coupon is the interest that they pay. Now, what also will happen is, in order to balance out that equation, because I'm not going to pay someone for 2.5%, I want 5%, which means that this seller has to discount their bond by $25. So what happens is you have the coupon rate of 2.5%, and then you've got the discount of 2.5% of the principal. That equals 5. So I'm getting my 5 from a combination of the interest and the principal. Now, what a lot of bond buyers are not realizing is they're looking at the coupon rate and saying, why am I not getting 5% on my money? Well, you are, assuming that that's what the rate was at the time, which is the assumption we're making. So assuming you're making 5, you are getting 5 if you bought it, let's say, last week, for example, where you could have gotten a 5% or more. You could have bought it 5. So it would have been, in some cases, the coupon was 0. So how do you make that work? Well, no one wants to make 0%. Well, here's how you do it. So you get a 0% coupon bond, which is fine, right? You're not getting any interest, but there's a discount. So instead of paying $1,000 for the bond, you pay $950. Now at maturity, you get $1,000 back, because at maturity of every bond, you get the principal interest, the principal back that was originally invested, which they call par, which is usually around $1,000. It can vary, but let's assume $1,000. So you bought this bond for $950. In a year, it's going to mature. They're going to pay you back $1,000. So you're going to make $50, which is 5%. Okay. So I point this out because as you're looking at your statements, no matter where they are, if you own an individual bond, you will see one part which says the coupon rate or the interest rate, and one part that says the principal. Now, the principal can fluctuate between now and when it matures, but what you need to know is that the discount that you bought it and the par value of what it'll be paid back at is what you'll get paid in addition to the interest rate. So there's usually a combination of the two. Now, as of today, we see a lot of 1% to 2.5% coupons. I think it was like 3 weeks ago, we saw a ton of 0 coupon rate bonds. And people say, why do I own that? Why do I own a 0 coupon bond? Well, it's because you're getting paid back in principal. So the point of this is really to educate you on how actual bonds work. It's been a long time since people have bought bonds. No one's been interested in bonds for a long time, but now the rates are actually getting to a point where they're somewhat favorable, where you might want to consider it. And so we put this video together just to help educate on what we're doing and why. So just understand, bonds are not complicated, but most people's understanding of them is a little rusty. So if it is rusty, feel free to contact me and I will help talk you through it. But realistically, understanding bonds is not that challenging. It's really just, there's 3 things you need to know. You know what the coupon rate is, you need to know what the principal, and then the current discount or premium to the principal. So just because the bond is paying back $1,000, it could be worth more, it could be worth less. It depends on what the coupon is. So the coupon, the principal, and the discount to the principal. And the other piece is to know that the price and rate move inversely to each other. So as rates are going up, prices are going down. As rates are going down, prices are going up. So in a perfect world, you buy a 20% bond and then wait till it goes to 0%, you'd make lots of money. In the inverse of that is you're buying it at 0%, which a lot of people did. That's the reason why some of these banks, Silicon Valley, Signature Bank, there's a few others, actually went under, is because they bought a lot of low interest bonds, and as the bond rates went up, their bond prices went down, and then they lost a lot of money. So there's actually other reasons they did, but that's one of the major reasons. So just understand that the inverse relationship of bonds is important, and also understand that The price of the bond doesn't matter as long as you're holding to maturity. So if you buy a bond today and rates go through the roof, you're still going to get $1,000 back at the end, or par value as it's called. You'll still get that back at the end. So it really doesn't matter. But you may lose your time value of money, because if you're only making 2% and now you can make 5%, then obviously you're missing that. So that is the difference, but you will get your money back at the end, assuming that the bond doesn't default, which does happen, but that happens with the government. We'll all be plugging each other in the woods, so we won't have to worry about that today. So I hope you enjoyed that lesson on bonds. This was fun for me. I wanted to make sure that we got this information out to you as quick as possible. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm pretty easy to find, and hope you have a pleasant day.